Good afternoon, my name is Terrell Henry. This will be oral template number 4, and today we'll be talking about chapter 2, A High Society. And the first section we're going to start out with is energy and power. And for the main point of that one, I have that energy and power are both very important, but are often confused. So for the first point I have for that one is that power is actually measured in watts and energy is not. So I feel like that's one of the most already confusing parts, is that people don't often know that. And then also that power is the rate at which we measure energy at. So the amount of energy you have will determine how much power you have. So for the second section I'm going to talk about is your energy's workers. And for that main point, I have that us as a society, we use a lot of energy, and we need to take a little bit better care of the amount of energy we use. So for the main points of that one, I have that it actually takes it would take 100 people it would take 100 people working a 24-hour day to support the amount of energy an average person would use on a daily basis. So this isn't even talking about the energy that someone who goes over and beyond with it. It's not even referring to that. This is just how much an average person would use, and it would take 100 people to work 24 hours a day to get us the amount of energy we use. So for the next point I have is, for the next section, we have who are your energy workers. And for that main point, I have that a lot of our energy we consume comes from our fossil fuels. And in the section actually said, I believe it's 79% of our energy actually comes from fossil fuels, so like coal, oil, natural gas, and only 4.3% is from like solar power, so like wind sources and like things that wouldn't harm our environment. And this is actually very important because fossil fuels, that's also obviously something that we can't recreate. Like we can't recreate oil. So like once we use all of the oil in the world, the oil's gone. So I think if we can find a way to use like wind turbines instead of having to use like something that uses oil all the time to power something, I feel like that can just help us in the long run, because once all the oil is gone, it's gone. And same thing for natural gas and coal. And I mean, we use coal a lot, especially with burning things to get energy. So like if we're able, and not only are we gonna run out of the natural gases, but the natural gases that we burn are not good for the environment at all. So I think if we can find a way to limit the amount of fossil fuels we use, then it will only benefit us in the long run with having those fossil fuels around longer, and also help our environment. For our next section, we have what energies workers buy us. And for that main point, I have that the amount of energy you use will often, the amount of energy you will use as like a country, it will depend on the location and the population of that country or area. So for example, for that, we're thinking about a bigger country such as China, that, you know, their population is very high. So they're obviously going to need more transportation, and that's going to use more energy than, say, a country that has not even half that population. So since they don't have half that population, it's actually going to take more, it's going to take since they don't have half the population that China would have, they're not going to need as much transportation as China would need. So therefore, they're not going to use as much energy as what China would use since their population is lower. And this could also be the same for location. Um, so for a country that is located where it's majority hotter, they're not going to use as much energy on furnaces and things like that. For a different place that where it's cold, they will need that energy because of the location. So it's actually very interesting that the location and the size of your population have a major impact on the amount of energy you will use. And then for the next section, we have science meets policies. And for that one, I have that will be energy will be wait, I'm reading the wrong section. Wrong section. We're on science meets policies, energy and quality of life. And for that, I have GDP is not an accurate model to use for your country's economic uses. So GDP will be used to measure the amount of money your country spends on like oil cleanups or anything like that. And that actually is a bad example, because since you're spending money on oil cleanups or to clean the water, or you're using that money to spend on prisons, and the GDP is actually calculating that money that you're spending on that, but none of those things I said would benefit a human life at all. So I think that GDP needs to be, I don't think the prices of an oil spill or to build a prison should be included in the GDP. And then, what I have for the main point of the entire chapter 2 is that energy is something we need, and the population and the location will affect how much energy we will use. And we will use fossil fuels for that energy. We will use fossil fuels to get energy, but we also need to think about limiting our fossil fuel usage. And then for my pictures, I have 3 pictures. We have the first picture showing the amount of transportation used, and so we have 37% on the left, compared to that's a in use accounting, compared to a primary energy accounting would only use 26%. And then I actually have another picture on here that is not on here right now, but it is the oil consumption rate, and it was the use of fossil fuels in the United States and the use of fossil fuels in other countries, but the use of fossil fuels in other countries, but I believe oil was the highest percentage fossil fuel we use in America. I believe it was around 37%. And I believe in other countries it was still, I think, around 30% of usage of oil. But I think if we can just drop the number of fossil fuels we're using, it will just only benefit us. So that was my reason for adding that picture on there. And then, so that picture's blurry. I believe it's about the population and where different countries are along the population line. I believe the United States up is up top. Can't really see the picture. The picture can really get it on there. But I think as a whole, if we just limit the use of fossil fuels, then it will only better us and our environment.